This episode of Southeast Iowa Today is brought to you by Griner Auto Body of Washington, Iowa, using state-of-the-art techniques and decades of experience to get your car back on the road after an accident. Car Doctor of Washington, Iowa. No matter who Frankensteined it, they can fix and clean and customize it. McDonald Boneyard of Keota, Iowa for all of your farm equipment and auto recycling needs. For great food, it's your choice. Your Choice Family Restaurant of Wayland, Iowa. Open Tuesday through Sunday. Try the John Bain sandwich on your next visit. Girling Repair of Winfield, Iowa. If your mower is dead, call Fred, your Husqvarna, Aaron's, and Gravely dealer. Fred also fixes and sells snow blowers. B&B Propane and the family of Jet Stops. CW Tree Trimming LLC. We're into your trees, not your wallet. Serving all of Henry County and the surrounding area, and we offer a senior citizen and veterans discount. Iowa Technology Systems delivers expert IT management that keeps your business running by ensuring your systems stay online and secure. Visit iowatechsys.com. They all present the award-winning Southeast Iowa Today. Here's the author of Christie's Journey, The Beat Goes On, and your host, me, John Bain.
It's April 10th, 2026, and I'm at the Mount Pleasant Community School District office, the district office, where a finance committee meeting was held at 2 p.m. I knew a lot of my audience would not be able to attend at that time of the day, but I was able to, so here I am. On the agenda, March 2026 financial reports and expenditures, review April 13 certified budget public hearing information, proposed Phase 2 general fund budget reduction overview, March 2026 revenue estimating conference summary, and save estimates based on proposed legislation. Superintendent John Henriksen realized a lot of folks that were in attendance here were here for item 3 on the agenda, so that's where he started. I'll have all the other coverage of the agenda in a separate episode.
All right, well, my apologies for a little late start. I just made more copies, so that's why we're getting started a little bit later. This is our regular Finance Committee meeting. We have 2 committee meetings, call it 3 committee meetings. On Thursdays before board meetings, we have our Site and Policy Committee meeting that we had last night. And then on Fridays before board meetings, we have the Finance Committee meeting, which is where we're at today. So the goal of committee meetings is really to have some discussion about things that are either on the board agenda, potentially on the board agenda, just other district items, so that the board we're in good communication. There's no action taken at committee meetings. The only action that's taken is at the regular board meeting. So we're just talking about these things that are on the committee agendas ahead of the board meeting. Hopefully it helps the board meeting run more efficiently. So I guess, Angie, with your permission, I don't mind going down to starting with number 3 rather than going through the expenditures. I think people are here regarding number 3, so we could start with that if I guess if that's acceptable to you. But
obviously, I've volunteered for the track meet, so I have a hard stop at about 1:45. 3:45.
45, you're late.
Sure. 3:45. So that's the only. As long as we make room to make sure that everything gets covered, yes, we can.
Yeah.
We can go with number 3 first.
Okay. All right. So we'll start with number 3. And again, in committee meetings, we have been open to some discussion. We had a ton of discussion last night, probably 3 hours worth, on the budget reductions. Phase 1, phase 2 of the budget reductions. We discussed last night at length phase 2 of the budget reductions. I gave an overview of the financials for the budget reductions over the next 2 fiscal years. And then we did talk about the potential closure of Salem Elementary as part of those budget reductions. So I'm going to go through the overview of the financials, and then we can entertain discussion at that point. But we'll just go ahead with number 3 first, and then we can go into the rest of the agenda. So I'm going to let me get down to those documents. So Craig had asked, Aaron had asked last night, his question was if we did just phase 1 of the budget reductions, which is about $985,000 for fiscal year 27. Phase 2 is about 800. I've said it's 815,000. It's 813,656 if you add everything up very specifically. So in these figures, we are assuming a 2% increase in expenditures each year. It's new expenditures each year, and it assumes a 35 student decrease for fiscal year 28. We already know fiscal year 27. We've figured that in, the student decrease. That number comes from the certified enrollment in October. That was a reduction of 51 students. So that's already in the revenue piece of all of this. So just these figures here for fiscal year 26, that's the current year that we are in, is fiscal year 26. So these are the revenues right here that that we are working with in fiscal year 26. Maximum district dollars, which is our enrollment dollars times the per pupil times any of the weighted dollars, combined district dollars for special education. Anything that has to do enrollment comes in as the maximum district dollars. Miscellaneous income, mentioned last night, the miscellaneous income, the lion's share of miscellaneous income is open enrollment. Federal funds do come in as miscellaneous income, so Title I, Title II, Title IV, all of that comes in as miscellaneous income. The instructional support levy, I must be off one line on the spreadsheet here. Anyway, the instructional support levy, this is a known number for fiscal year 26. The instructional support levy is 10% of the previous year's regular program dollars, but it is not fully funded, and I'll get to that in a little bit. It's not fully funded because the state does not pay a portion of it that they are supposed to pay. They haven't paid it for 25 years, but so it's not exactly 10%. So then the preschool foundation aid. Preschool, what you do there is you take the number of preschoolers, divide it by 2 because you only get 0.5 funding for preschool. So you take the number of preschoolers, divide it by 2, and then multiply it times the per pupil amount. So the revenue for fiscal year 26, $24.88 million. So our total expenditures that we have that are budgeted for this year is $25.911 million. And I went through all of this last night, how we had built up an unspent authorized budget authority. We had built that up since 2019 and before, and all the way up to 2024. We had built up about $6.9 million in unspent budget authority. So for fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26, the board made a decision that we weren't gonna make any staffing changes. We were gonna leave programming and staffing the way it was. Even though we knew that our expenditures were going to be higher than our revenues in those coming years. So that's what you're seeing here is this is what that reflects. The expenditures at $25.911 million, the revenue at $24.88 million. So in fiscal year 26, again, which is what we are in, I'm anticipating that we're gonna spend 104% of the revenue that we receive. I did mention that in fiscal year 24, we had an unspent authorized budget authority of $6.9 million. That over fiscal year 25 and now into fiscal year 26 has decreased about $1.8 million. This is an estimate that when we close the year on June 30th of 2026, our unspent authorized budget is going to be about $5.154 million. So as a percent of revenue, that's about 20.7%. You know, the recommendation is between 10 and 20% of the revenues. So if you do the reductions as we have planned, and phase one was approved, and so we have moved forward with phase one about $985,000. The need or the recommendation was $1.8 million of reductions. So this fiscal year 27 reflects the $985,000 as a reduction. So the expenditures reflect $985,000 of reductions, and then after that 2% new spending. As we settle contracts and pay our bills, it represents 2% new spending. So with those reductions, you can see our expenditures would be estimated in fiscal 27 to be $25.425 million. The revenue for that year would be at just over $24.9 million. So again, you're spending a bit more than you're taking in at 102% of revenue. Now I don't have the spreadsheet up there. Could put it up there, but don't have the spreadsheet up there that shows what if we didn't do any reductions. If I remember correctly, those estimates were spending 106% of our revenue. So then at 102% and those expenditures, your unspent authorized budget is going down to $4.634 million. Okay, so in fiscal 28, if you do the reductions of about that $815,000, you're getting close to being back where you need to be. I would again, these assume a 35 student decrease. It assumes 2% additional funding from the state of Iowa. We call that SSA, State Supplemental Aid. It assumes 2%. It assumes a miscellaneous income increase of 2%. So the revenue is $24.959 million, and expenditures, you're reducing the $815,000, and then again it's assuming 2% spending on that for expenditures of just about just a little over 100% of the revenues. So, and then that would put our unspent budget authority at $4.489 million. So what Aaron had asked last night was if you do phase one, but you don't do phase two, we already went through these numbers right here. But the above reflects only phase one reductions. Assumes a 2% increase in expenditures and assumes a 35 student decrease for fiscal year 28. So if you didn't do phase two reductions, your revenues are 24.959. Your revenues are going to be the same, obviously. Your expenditures went up to $25.933 million. You're back up to spending 104% of your revenue, and then your unspent authorized budget goes down to $3.66 million. And that's your percentage of unspent authorized over the revenue.
What difference would it make if you didn't lose the 35 students?
I haven't, I mean, I could do that easy enough. I mean, 35 students it's 35 students times $8,100, yeah. So, yeah.
Well, essentially negates your 2% revenue increase that the state would provide, right? So you're not really washing it. Your 35 students is gonna be greater than that 2% the state would provide. Is there a basement as to how many students Mount Pleasant districts thinks they can get to? Because 35 students year over year over year over year essentially drives you down to a smaller district completely. Is there a basement in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, the only projections that we have, the Department of Education, they use a model to project certified enrollment. The projections that they have are through the year 2930. And they have us, they use birth rate, and they use progression, how many kids were in this grade level, how many stayed as they went from that grade level to the next grade level, and then applying that percentage. Anyway, all of that, we've looked at that before. I don't have it here today, but that is, you can go to the Iowa Department of Education, go to pre-K through 12 statistics, data and statistics, and just click on enrollment projections. And our 2930, school year 2930 projections, I don't know, board members help me, it's like 1,538 students was the projection for 2930. This fall, we certified 1,705. Okay. So I'll get to that. So as you guys are here, you know, to ask questions or to comment on this and on the potential closure of Salem, as we transition into a bit of that discussion, I'll share just a couple more slides and then we can go from there. We did have, I'm not limiting the discussion. I'm just saying we spent about 3 hours plus on this last night. One of the slides that I did share last night, as it pertains to kindergarten roundup and as it pertains to Salem enrollment, our April 8th, 2026 kindergarten roundup registrations. We've got 75 kids registered at Harlan Elementary. We have 5 students registered for Salem Elementary for kindergarten roundup. We do know that 2 of those 75 are going through roundup at Harlan, but they haven't decided on an attendance center. So we looked at that. We did look at this 25-26 Salem enrollment. I shared this with the committee last night. What we've always called the boundary line, the south boundary line, which has been established for years and years and years, well before my time as superintendent. But 260th Street and South, and to give you some perspective, the road south of the high school is 255th. So basically the next gravel to the south, and everything south is 260th. 260th is next, and everything south is Salem boundary. So everything from the east boundary of the district to the west boundary of the district, anything south of there goes to Salem Elementary. So this year in 25-26, there are 55 students that live in that geographical area, 266th and south. So of the total of 87 that attend Salem, 55 live in that boundary, 13 live somewhere north of 260th Street, and then 19 are open enrolled to Salem. That's what makes up the 87 students. We looked at, last night we looked at other districts, comparative, numbers of students. We looked at building configurations, and that most districts our size are running either 4 or 5 attendance centers. Most of them are running a high school, a middle school, and 2 elementaries. This year, Mount Pleasant runs 7 attendance centers, a high school, a middle school, an alternative school, and 4 elementaries. So then the last thing I just wanted to share, this caught my attention yesterday. This came out that the CDC announced that U.S. birth rates hit a new record low. We've talked about birth rates. We just have. We talked about demographics and the general decline of birth and birth rates. Obviously not just a Southeast Iowa problem. I thought this was interesting. It just caught my attention. More babies born in 1966 when our population was 196 million than in 2025 with 340 million people. So I went to this piece of the CDC, birth rates, fertility rates, and that's in the packet from the last 2 years. But then if you scroll down, this isn't from 1960. I think the data is from 2000. This is the actual number here, over 4 million in 2000, and down to it's like 3.6 million. So I put that up there because it caught my attention. We've been talking about birth rates, and we're as a district, as an area, we're not going to live outside of that data. The reality is we don't live outside of that data, and we're seeing it. We have seen it, and that's what we, since 2007, our enrollment was 520 students larger, more than it was this fall. So we're not immune. We don't live outside this data. We've got to look, in my opinion, we have to look to the future. We've got to look at the future of programming, the number of attendance, our enrollment, the number of attendance centers that we are running based on the data that's in front of us. Not just the financial data, but the demographic data. We've got to look to the future. And so that's my overview of the, of this particular agenda item. So, yeah.
So even though the birth rates in Henry County do not look local, like since they're not down, do you take that in consideration or you just look at state?
No, when we did look at birth rates, I was looking at Henry County, yes. Yeah, the birth rates, if you wanna look, I have copies of all of that, but if you want to do your own research on that, if you Google the Iowa State Data Center, you can drill down on all of that, all of those demographics. You can get it for cities, municipalities, counties. Iowa State Data Center is where we got that, where I got that data.
I'm an optimist, but quick math tells me that if we didn't lose the 35 students, we'd be within 300,000 of the approximate 100% instead of 102% for fiscal year 27. Does that sound about right?
I haven't put my head or pencil to that, no.
Yeah. Well, I just would generate 283,500.
Okay.
I think, and if you add that to your 24.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
We have to work on that. Big time and immediately.
Do we know what the open enrollment rate out of Mount Pleasant is?
I don't have a rate, but I believe our open enroll out, this year was 100 and, I think I put, that was included in what you requested?
It was not.
141?
It wasn't in there. I've done some quick math, but you're probably pretty close with 140,
141?
150.
Yeah.
So how do we get 10 to 15 to 20% of those people back? Because I know several that are faculty that open and roll out for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
How do we get those back, right? What are we gonna do as a district to evolve to keep those people here?
I 100% agree. I agree.
Because Jessica gave a breakdown of operating costs by school, thank you for doing that. And I've got a lot of questions with some of this stuff because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me why we spend $100,000 a year in substitute elementary teachers. Not to mention the millions of dollars we lose from an open enrollment standpoint. So to me, that's a cultural problem that we've got to figure out why that's happening.
Why people take their paid time off that they're given,
I don't know what
or are
causes
they sick?
I don't know what causes substitute teachers, right? Again, I'm just looking at numbers, right? We're talking revenue streams, we're talking expenses, those are just questions.
But you do understand that
Yep,
each
absolutely.
employee is given personal days that
And
they
deserve
can
those.
take,
Yep,
right?
Yep, they deserve those. I'm not questioning it. I'm just asking questions based on numbers that I see. Right? So, we talk revenue streams, right? So if you're gonna run it like a business, we gotta understand the revenue streams and what drives revenue and what drives expenses down. And these are all numbers that come up.
Isn't that a very high rate of students in open enrolling out?
I would,
It's
if
fairly consistent.
yeah, and if you compare that number, everybody wants to do comparisons. We talked about that last night, comparing ourselves to other districts, and that I could pull up on our designation versus other districts. But anyway, comparing other districts, much higher numbers of open enrollment out in our similar sized districts, Fairfield, Fort Madison, Keokuk, Burlington, much higher than Mount Pleasant. I don't have them at my fingertips, but yeah.
It's ran in the general area, it's ran around that 130, 150, somewhere in that range over the last several years. A couple years we looked at the reasons for open enrollment out, and we tried to map that. There were a variety of reasons. We talked about some of those. We didn't have, one of those things that was a larger portion than some others was daycare availability, which is why when we went through 2 times ago master planning, trying to get some things around that, we tried to include daycare so that you could, from birth to all the way through, there was something that the school could do with the community. That came at an extra cost as well, and those ideas, based on the survey that we also threw out, was not favorable, but we did look at that because we do recognize that. We know that that is one reason that some people choose. It's not the only reason. We've had several high school students in the last 2 years that have chosen to open enroll out to Waco. They have a 4-day school week. That's a reason. We haven't really talked about 4-day school weeks much because our students have different needs than other students. And with our high free and reduced and our low socioeconomic status, right now we haven't entertained that because we don't feel that's in the best interest of all of our students to even look at a 4-day. We know that that could come with cost reduction. Other districts have done that. We haven't chosen to look at that because we don't think it's what's best for all of our students.
I think we could, maybe all of us could agree that we have to look at what we're doing. There are almost 7,400 fewer public education students in Iowa than there were last year. That the landscape has changed. It has changed dramatically over the last, I'll say 6 years, because I want to make sure throw COVID in there, and then the last, through the administration at the state level that we have, the landscape of public education has completely changed. So we absolutely have to think about how we do business. What attracts people? What does attract people to a district? I firmly believe that the product, the instructional product that we put out there is one of the things that attract. And you can see how we score versus other regional districts, and it's very favorable. I firmly believe that our facilities are a huge piece of what attracts people to a district. Newer, safer, spacious. Those things attract people to a district. I'm gonna say it. I honestly think about, this Contitex doing a $65 million expansion, and when people, I wonder what people think when they see our buildings that were built in the 50s and the 60s. Anyway, I agree that we've got to look at how we do business.
I want to speak to, we've been taking, we hear a lot of negatives, right? And we understand that that's your job to bring up to us what our deficits are and how we can get better. And we recognize there are cultural things that have to improve. There are those things. The board steers, doesn't row. That's the district's job, right? But some of the things, we have a new superintendent coming on board. We have a new board. We haven't been together that long. Part of onboarding the new superintendent, we have to look at our vision and our missions. And it's a great time with new leadership to redo that and look at that again. I think we did that when we turned over the last time. So this summer, as a new superintendent starts, we have a student summit on success, and a training session that's available in June. And the theme of that is common vision, common goals. And so that really feeds into what the board needs to work on and what we need to work on with the new superintendent. Fortunately, it can't be done overnight, but we are aware that there are opportunities. Some people make those opportunities very much aware, and it's hurting our employees. They feel beat down every day. And we do good things. That's why we start off board meetings with student spotlights, because there are opportunities in the district, but we are doing good things too. And because we have to make budget cuts, we're overshadowing some of those good things. So we have to focus on both. We have to improve. We want to grow. Growing means making our district better, having the right facilities, having the trained staff, having the right staff, right? And we're tasked with that. And how can we help the district to make those decisions on what to spend money on? And it's not easy, but we do recognize that. It's unfortunately, we can't make it overnight, but we are listening, and we do have some of those same questions. We just don't have all the answers.
This is not a partisan question, but have you engaged with legislators? And we all know that private schools are taking away our students. And yet the legislature and the governor continue to favor that. And I believe it'll continue.
Aaron and Mike both participate a lot in the Day on the Hill. The IASB, the Iowa Association of School Boards, has a day where you can go. Aaron and Mike, John has participated in that. We have roundtables with the legislature when our representatives, when they come down. Those are things that we keep continuing, that the funding models aren't fair for all students.
I get that, yeah.
And so, yes, and Aaron does a great job of, he's in the weeds with that, and he lets all of us know those things that we need to be emailing our legislature on. We get emails from a school board, overall school board piece on, hey, this is going through the House, you might want to contact your local congressperson to voice your opinion.
So on the flip side of that though, I had the opportunity to listen to DT McGee talk from the Iowa School Board yesterday. The landscaping's not changing. So my question is how do we go to market with the product we have to attract the students back into the area, right? Because I don't see any marketing initiatives where some of these smaller schools are posting marketing initiatives. Come join our 4-day school week, come join our academic calendar because it benefits everybody, but I don't see any of that progression within this district. And is there something I'm missing? I'm not asking it as an offense to anybody, I'm just asking because I don't see it.
I think we've been kind of spinning our wheels, so, we don't have a master plan. We have a mission statement and a vision, but we don't have a collective, not everybody agrees, so we're not moving forward in that case. So your question is spot on. That's something that we have to look at because we don't have that.
So doesn't new leadership bring new opportunities to do that? Therefore, do we make a rash decision today to obviously put new leadership in a position of detriment when they start? I think that's some of the questions that maybe some of these other folks around here have.
What do you mean? What do you mean detriment?
So if we make a rash decision today, you potentially lose some of your marketing leverage, like a school like Salem, where you get open enrollment opportunities to foster and to build upon, as opposed to say, hey, we got rid of them, here's what we're doing now. Instead, you lose some of that. We've heard from a lot of families that said, hey, if Salem stays open, I would consider sending my kids there, but I'm not going to with the threat of it shutting down every year. That has been reached out. That's been,
Salem stays open for the next week.
no, I'm not asking for a guarantee at all. You can never do that. With the landscape.
But that is
changing,
kind of what you're asking.
I'm not necessarily asking it. I'm saying.
You are, because you're saying we can't have a guarantee. I can't give you a guarantee that it won't stay open.
I would never ask for the guarantee, but if there are ways you could potentially prolong that activity to guarantee it maybe for 5 or 10 years, but you won't know the landscape right away. And again, if the numbers add up, I get it. I struggle with some of the numbers that have been presented because I can't get them to add up completely. That's the whole reason why I asked some of the questions.
Just not threatening it every year would help your enrollment. You have people leaving next year just from you guys threatening to close it now. So you're already cutting your enrollment just from threats.
I'm not gonna stand up here and guarantee that Harlan and Salem are gonna be
Nobody's
open in the next
asking
5
you.
years.
I agree with that. I agree with your statement, but
We
year over
have
year,
to
yes.
change,
Sure.
right? You said we have to evolve. And the evolution is going to be consolidating schools, unfortunately, right? In my opinion.
Oh, sure, that's an opinion, absolutely.
Do you believe that if the enrollment would happen to go back up, would these still have to do that?
I'm not going to live on a hope and a prayer. We have too many years of declining enrollment. We have too many years of low SSA. I'm gonna go off of what the recent 10, 15 year old data is showing us, what the trend lines are showing us. If it starts ticking up and we see year over year and we're starting to burst at the seams, like, that's great. But I don't see how we can do long-term vision on a hope and a prayer of things that haven't been coming
I
true.
agree. It would be more, like you said, implementing programs, finding out what our strengths are now, not 5 years from now, but what is Mount Pleasant's strengths now that we could try to market, try to bring people back. The ones that are leaving, you say you interview them. Is there a pattern? Is the bullying a problem? Is there communication? Are they not happy with staffing? You know, and put that out there. Is there what can be done to get that back up? Not a hope and a prayer, but actually steps. What can be taken? Can the community help? What, you know, this isn't just the board, it's all of us.
That's the other thing I don't see, Josh. I don't see anything on what are the open enrollments to Harlan. Nothing's been seen.
So that's great.
I know that there's 19 at Salem because that's what's over. That's what's
We're
talked
grade
about.
alike, so you're not open enrolling from Lincoln to Harlan.
Say that again.
We're grade alike here in town, so you're not open enrolling from Lincoln to Harlan.
Right, but from other districts, right? What are the open
I
enrollments
mean, that's
from
just
other
all
districts?
into the.
Nobody knows that because it's not ever talked about. My other question is an itemization of, like Mr. H had talked about with slide 33, there's no itemization of, like if you did a termination of teacher leadership and compensation program, what all does that give to the teachers? I don't know that, I don't think the general public knows what that accommodates. He listed termination of elementary's math interventionists. I don't know what that is. I don't know how much that costs because there's no.
It's two teachers who support elementary students who struggle with math. They're less than proficient in math.
Okay. The third one was the term of IJAG programs at the middle school and high school. What are those? What?
The IJAG program serves probably close to 150 students. The program is IJAG stands for JAG stands for Jobs for America's Graduates. The I is for Iowa Jobs for America's Graduates. They call it IJAG. It's a support program that really tries to provide support for students who are at risk. They're at risk of dropping out. It's a way of connecting them with the school, giving them real world experience. We've had a number of presentations from our IJAG teachers, our IJAG students on that program. You cut the IJAG program, you're going to see dropout rates increase.
Is that part of the CTE programming that?
No.
No, it's different from that? Okay.
IJAG has a lot of community involvement as well,
Okay.
both the middle school and the high school. There's a career exploration section to IJAG, and so engineers, healthcare, city workers, variety teachers, they all come and present about their careers as part of the career exploration. They also have a financial piece that they do, so more of those real world opportunities and how they make shopping lists. I participated at a day in the high school where the 9-10 grades had a shopping list, and they priced things, how much it cost at Walmart, how much it cost at Hy-Vee, and how much it cost at Aldi. So as they're budgeting and figuring out what skills they need for after, those are things that the IJAG program does for those kids. It's not for everybody, but it has given them a sense of community, and we have seen very favorable results from it for our students in graduation and beyond.
What does the career and technical education offering, that was the fourth thing that you listed?
Yeah, you'd have, the reason I listed that is because you have to have 4 strands of CTE. That's by Iowa code. So we offer business, we offer construction manufacturing, we offer, I'm not gonna be able to think of the main heading, but family and consumer science falls underneath the heading of one of the strands. And then agriculture education, those are the strands that we offer. We have other CTE offerings that look a little bit different, digital electronics, computer-aided drafting, those kinds of things. So we offer a bit more than the minimum of the required strands. That's one of the places I would recommend looking if we have to go about this another way, would be to cut programming, to cut CTE programming.
But by code, you're required to have a portion of it to a certain
By
level.
code, you have to have 4 strands, yes, yeah, and we have 4 plus a little bit.
I would just continuously remind us that our projections, we're not, you don't wanna look out past 2 years, but we're not done past 2 years. We have $3.3 million cut in the next 5. So if we take another idea, and yeah, maybe Salem's open for another year because we're cutting other places, right? But then what happens in 2 years? What happens in 3 years? Where do we cut then? Are we having the same conversations again of cut everywhere else but Salem? Cut everywhere else but Harlan and Lincoln?
My hope would be you could get the enrollments up at Salem if you quit talking about closing it though, which would make a big difference with their veteran teachers there with cost per student.
Do we have any idea how many of these kids in Salem open enrolled instead of enrolling in Salem, the kindergartners and stuff? I'm sure there were some, but, because I've heard a lot of talk, if Salem's gonna close, I'm gonna start my child there and then pull them out next year. I don't have any way to find that, but
The open enrollment period for kindergartners, that deadline isn't until September, so we won't know until then. Every other grade, the initial deadline is March 1st, so we had those requests. Kindergarten falls under a different rule, they have until September.
Is it consistent for that to be low and you get higher numbers for all schools by September, historically?
Open enrollment for it to change between March and
Yeah, for
September.
kindergarten. Do you see an
Not
uptick?
much, no,
It's usually pretty realistic.
not very much, yeah.
Okay, I mean, I would go back to, we're not only looking at Salem, the population decline only in Salem.
No,
We're
'cause
looking
it's
at the
everywhere.
population
I saw
decline
that last night, for
everywhere,
sure.
right? And consolidation for the entire Mount Pleasant School
Right.
District.
But you're gonna lose the
But
Salem people.
and-
That's where, I
and if
feel
we
like
say
we're thorn to
Salem's
the side
open-
of Mount Pleasant and you wanna move forward without Salem, lose them and then move on. That's how it feels.
If Salem is able to get, I don't even know a number, 35 students there, like, great, that's truly great, 35 additional students in Salem. But is that still where we want or need to be for,
It'd be 2
The
sections of classes in Mount Pleasant at that point if they're running 14 or 15 kids as well. I mean, when you have 75 are registered for kindergarten in Mount Pleasant with 5 or 6 sections. Like how many is that per
depends on the
class?
grade level right now for.
Or maybe kindergarten's not decided yet, but
I get, I know I say this, understanding my position as short time as superintendent. I do not believe that the future of Mount Pleasant Community School District is 3 or 4 elementaries with an outlier elementary in Salem. It's a consolidated future with 1 or 2 elementary buildings and a middle school and a high school. That's what it looks like. And that's what that's what the data says. mean, you look at that birth rate data, in 5 years, you know, those are the kindergarten students, there's just less kids. There's just there's fewer kids.
So you're not planning on growing once, say you get to elementary schools, then you're not planning on growing after that, cause there's no room for growth if you're building at Wesleyan and Van Allen, right? Like, there wouldn't be room for extra classrooms at that point.
In the rendition of the master plan that was 2 times ago, we had planned for, we had planned for 6 sections. In that plan, we planned for 6 sections, and then at least 2 flex rooms were part of that, in case
For
you had,
bigger classes.
in case you had a bump, yeah.
I don't think anyone disagrees that there's financial challenges, right? And I think we can all agree to that. The question I have is, based on what I've done and the questions I've asked, stuff like that, are you making a bad decision based on bad data from a financial number standpoint? Because I'm already questioning the stuff I'm seeing, meaning you may have some stuff.
Tell me what you
wrong,
mean, Corey, tell me
Sure.
what numbers you mean.
Yeah, so, let's go to, Salem has a shared principal, right? Right? Is her salary cutting in half or by $40,000 when you close Salem because her responsibilities become less?
But I didn't include, no.
Jessica
No.
gave this to me, so
Yeah.
it's data she sent.
But I didn't include that on that
Sure.
Salem sheet. There were things as I went through that as I looked at it and said, no, that's not a savings, that's just a shift of the costs.
Sure.
So, unless the board said, all right, we're gonna go back down to, there was a time when we had 4 elementary buildings and 2 principals. If we're gonna go back down to 2 principals, then there's some cost savings there. But if you're not doing that, you would have a principal at the 3 remaining elementaries, and that's how I approached the.
Yeah, so we also, and again, I'm just looking at some examples that I have. We pay $40,000 in Salem for a music teacher that I don't know if they're fully there, but that's what's itemized in their list from an operating cost perspective. So if your operating costs are out of whack, based on, again, a spreadsheet that I have, you could be putting wrong data into the wrong subset, meaning that a school like Harlan may be costing you more money than a school like Salem, or a Van Allen, or a Lincoln. How do you make a decision with data that may not be 100% accurate? Or is it just an agenda item to say, hey, they're the outlier, let's just move on?
No, I took general fund. The reason that it costs more at Salem is because we have a full contingent of K to 5 teachers and way fewer students. I mean, there's.
Corey, the argument you're trying to make is keep Salem, but close Lincoln.
I'm just saying, are you getting the right data? That's all I'm asking. Birth rates be what they are, they're gonna be out there statistically, I get that stuff, right? That's common knowledge.
But we know we have to make budget reductions, right?
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
we're looking at budget reductions, saying, how can we do that? Obviously, it's mostly gonna be staff, whether it's
Yeah,
teachers
absolutely.
or admin.
Yeah.
So in doing that, we're looking at, well, what schools can absorb that
Absolutely.
reduced staff, right? So if we're looking at closing an attendance center or just reducing staff, how would you propose possibly doing that?
Yeah, so, we heard in the public hearing that, hey, adding 2 or 3 students to the current sections is negligible, right? So you have multiple sections now in the grade alike schools to where you could decrease some of those sections immediately. Because we've heard that adding 3, 4 students is negligible to the current outcomes. We have 6 sections today, right? Freeing up space, which we've heard on videos and seen online, that teachers need more space in the classrooms in Mount Pleasant today.
I
Sure,
want
go
you to
ahead.
finish. I
Yeah,
totally
no,
want you to finish.
You're good.
We
Go ahead.
had a team meeting this morning, and we did talk about that because we had conversation about it last night. We don't lack classroom space. We do not lack classroom space. We have classroom space. It's other spaces that facilitate the things in that triangle right up there, from English language learners to talented and gifted to special education. those are the spaces that we don't have, because the buildings that we're operating in were built in the 50s and 60s, and we weren't required, you know, so the actual classroom space, and the conversation that I had with the elementary principals this morning, that they affirmed is, we don't need classroom space, it's the other spaces that we're struggling with.
Well, and again, you reduce a section and because you have the right size of students in the section in a Van Allen, you could reduce a section, that frees up a classroom space for the other activities, plus gives you flex space, right? And again, I'm just ideas that as I've looked at data, I've asked questions that I come up with. General fund cost per student, if you're gonna use that number, I can't fully get to the numbers every time that you've presented, which leads me to believe there's data possibly in the wrong locations, which is giving a false pretense that the cost per student isn't right, and that's all I'm asking, because again, I would want as accurate a data as possible, but I'm seeing gaps in some places that I just have questions on.
So what I hear, what I take is what Craig, you kind of said last night, right? We're leaving all attendance centers open, we're just cutting a section size of Mount Pleasant and redistributing those kids. Okay, let's just take that at face value.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now the kids, yes, we have higher section sizes in Mount Pleasant. We as a board, or me in particular, says that's not fair.
Sure.
We need to now bus students to Mount Pleasant, so all section, or not, to Salem. So Salem is now we have in the pot of every section size needs to be the same. So logistically, not saying it's impossible, we can do it, but we're busing kids from Mount Pleasant to Salem to make sure those section sizes are evenly spread out throughout the district.
Sure.
That's what you're saying.
If you're truly gonna compare revenue to expense data, you may have to look at that.
Yeah,
right?
I just wanted to get.
Absolutely.
But that's what you're
Absolutely.
saying, and that's what Craig had suggested.
And I wasn't at the
night as
meeting
well.
last night, I wasn't able to attend, so please, if there's stuff that was discussed, I just wasn't able to attend,
Yeah.
so.
No, that's fine, I just wanted to put it together if that's.
Yeah,
that's kind of what
and
you were
again,
thinking.
you know, when I look at the numbers that were presented on the 23rd, you know, the average cost per student I get at Salem's like $9,500, where what was presented was $12,800, and I see a huge $3,000 gap, which leads me to believe that somewhere your top number is off a little bit, and you know, and when I look through the operating costs, that's where I see some gaps that I'm like, I don't understand this.
Well,
So I can explain it.
Sure.
So when I sent that to Sammy, I told her I only had the elementary so far, and I was working on the middle school, high school, but I also am working on the district level. So like maintenance, custodial, at a district level. And so those costs are divided by all kids. And so those costs are not in there, like administration or, central office staff, central receiving. So those costs have to go on top of what you have there.
Okay, so
go ahead.
this, I believe I sent to you.
You did.
This is running a Fund 10 report, general fund. Fund 10 report for every building. These are the served number of students, served enrollment. And it's a simple math calculation. What's the cost per pupil? 2021, these are our elementaries. 2021, 2022. That's how you're going to get a general fund cost per pupil, is to take Fund 10 for every building and divide it by the number of students served.
I fully understand that, but if you go to 24, 25, further down, it's like on the second page,
I can get to it.
which is what I had, that $1 million+ is not what was presented on the 23rd. What was presented on the 23rd was a little over $800,000 per student. So at that point, your cost, there's a $200,000 gap in those numbers. Therefore, your cost per student now is altered. And again, is all the data in the right buckets to help drive an accurate data-driven decision?
Was that 800 the amount that we'd be saving by closing?
No.
That was just one of the
The answer to that is, there are funds even in that are going to be shifted. All of that represents, what I had just showed there, all of that represents TLC, teacher salary supplement. It represents all of those. Those costs are going to be shifted.
Sure. So even then, in the spreadsheets Jesse gave us, when you get down here to the actual costs and you sum them all up, again, I look at some of these costs going, again, a music teacher that's got an allocation of $40,000 to it, but a music teacher at Harlan's only got 11,000. So are the buckets divided the way they're supposed to be? And I don't know any different. I'm just gonna look at numbers in a spreadsheet. Because again, if they're not accurately depicted, you're getting false data that can lead to potentially bad decisions.
Right, and they are, when they were, allocated to the chart of account number that they would, like, per building, per
Right.
se, it goes on the amount of time that they spend
Sure.
in each building, so
Yep.
that's how they're allocated.
So a 2-day-a-week principal cost is not equaling to 16 hours worth of work from a principal at Salem. In just my experience there. So why is her allocation? And that's where I would ask, okay, if you're gonna close a building where you're shared principal, $40,000 should come out as cost savings because now there's less responsibility. In the business world that I live in, that's how it kind of works, and that's why I was asking those questions.
Well, I think argue there's not less responsibility. She's still principal 8 hours out of the day or however long.
Sure,
right?
but there's less travel distance, there's less students for responsibility.
Absolutely, but she can stay at one building
Sure.
that entire
Sure.
time then and concentrate on that.
I think the staffing is an area that needs to be looked at. Salem has never had a half-time principal, never. When I was on the board, if the principal's there half day a week, that was something, okay? But nevertheless, we need to look at that, whole issue. I'm not suggesting that we necessarily have to reduce staff a whole bunch. The new superintendent, as I understand, I've never met her, but she teaches at UNI in the program for people pursuing the superintendency. We ought to be able to work something out with her to get a lot of student teachers down here. That's just one example. At the high school level, why don't we get our kids out into the community more? We ought to be doing that. That could affect staffing. We just need to look at things like that, I think.
Yeah, and again, I'm basing it off of 5 pages of spreadsheets that I've kind of looked through, gone over multiple times. And if it was me making a decision in the business that I run today, I would want all the facts. And I'd want to go, and maybe you guys have gone line by line to question everything. I don't know, but I probably would have wanted this prior to making a recommendation for a phased decision. So that way I had accurate data, because we're talking about data to drive the decision, which totally disregards some of the student activities or involvement, and potentially is detrimental to them.
The board's role is to look at, our recommendation to the district was we need to cut $1.8 million.
Absolutely.
And we agreed over 2 years. The recommendation then comes from the district to the board, which is the point we're at, where we're reviewing that proposal.
Sure.
So there's not anything, that's what we tasked them with, that's what they brought us back, and that's where the phase we're in. But you just said that we should have asked for a more specific proposal. We just asked to identify $800,000, and now we're in that deliberation.
And I get that, but I didn't ask for that. What I said is I guess I would have wanted it up front as part of the recommendation. And what I saw in the recommendation is, here's the only 2 options. And there maybe is a third option, or there could be more options. I don't know if we've identified all of them, and that's my only concern.
When you say it comes from a recommendation of the district, who is that? Like the admin or principals or?
Yeah, we brought in,
Oh, from
I-
the I know what you're talking about now.
I,
Okay.
I had said months ago, we had said months ago, actually at the close of fiscal year 25, had said, guys, it looks like we're gonna need to reduce somewhere around 1.3 to 1.6 million dollars. That was based on my review of our finances from that time, doing those the forecasting. So the recommendation was, let's bring in some outside resources who regularly deal with school finance. I mean, I regularly deal with school finance, but let's bring in the outside. Their recommendation was $1.8 million.
So that doesn't come, the recommendation doesn't come from within as much on this.
I'm just
Like,
saying.
you agree with it?
Yeah, I'm just saying that I had the same, they looked at the numbers, they had their numbers, I looked at the numbers prior to that, and said, this is where we need to be, and they came up with the same thing, a little bit higher.
Do
Yeah.
principals get involved with that at all, that decision making?
With reductions, yeah, we teamed, and went through a process on the reductions, and came up with the phase 1 and the phase 2. As Angie said, you know, phase 2, the 815,000, you know, are there other ways to get to 815,000? Yep, there are other ways to do it. You're gonna go deep into staffing and deep into programs, to come up with another, you know, $500 plus thousand.
So when I've been talking to Ashley, she says it's all a decision of the board. She has nothing to do with the decision or the recommendations, whatever.
She was part of the.
So she does have something to do with it. She just maybe isn't comfortable speaking on it.
I don't wanna, I'm not gonna speak for Ashley, but was Ashley part of the conversations on how we reduce, what does this need to look like? She absolutely was.
And just from another side of that, why we have to fight so hard for a great school is we have no support from our admin. She's wanting to close our school. And so she's not at any of these meetings. She's not doing anything to keep the school, encourage the school. That's how it feels for us, that we're around her. We see what's going on at the school. It's declining over the last 2 years.
I can't.
And that's just an opinion, and I know a lot of people agree with me,
Yeah.
but that's frustrating.
I agree with Corey. We haven't run it like a business.
Right.
This is a business.
If we're gonna talk revenue, we probably ought to look at
You
that.
might wanna look at that, and sometimes Sister Sue may have to go.
Yeah.
You don't know. I mean, that's what happens when you're cleaning up house, you know?
Yep.
I mean, look at the presidency and whatever, you know, he's doing whatever he's trying to do, clean up the swamp and all that stuff. I'm not comparing that to this.
Right.
But we are in a situation because we did not manage well.
I
And
would
I'm-
disagree with that.
and
We
I'm
did
com-
manage well.
And I'm coming, I
We
mean,
absolutely managed what, you look at our expenditures up through fiscal year 24, and you can call it what you want if you wanna say it's not managing well. The board made decisions, based on unspent authorized budget to remain at the staffing levels that we have been at. That was so, you know, I mean, if you wanna call that mismanagement, I would wholeheartedly disagree with that. Anyway,
On decision making though, like Corey pointed out, if you guys don't have the good data, it's like what happened last night with the bus barn, right? At the time, whenever it was discussed of building a new one, at that time, you guys were told that you could get $100,000, $90,000, whatever it was. Then, so you made that decision based off of those numbers. Last night, now you find out that it's only pennies on the dollar, right? Because it was bad data.
but Mickey, what data are you saying is bad?
I'm not necessarily for this here, a lot of it.
Well, I'm not saying it's bad, right? It doesn't pass my eye test when I don't understand it, and
So-
therefore I have
Misplaced.
questions.
Right, so I would like to get with you
Absolutely.
maybe, and we can go over that
Sure.
instead of like publicly saying
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, and again, it may be all the right numbers, it may not be in the right portion of the columns on the spreadsheet, and then that totally drives your numerator and denominator to make those numbers different, right?
So those numbers are, off of our chart of accounts, general ledger. I took them right from the definition
Sure.
and plugged them in. So that's how they were cost.
Sure.
And that's how they went through the DE. We have to file our annual reports or whatever, so that's exactly how it is. But yes, I would be more than happy to sit down with you.
So these aren't like at your fingertips ahead of time, like these are stuff, like when we requested this, did you have to do it then, or are these things that are already figured that like you share with the board and
No,
stuff
there's
at their
over-
request?
No, there's over 2,500 pages of general ledger, and I've spent, I don't know, 2 weeks, just putting them in the spreadsheets and making data easy to read for our board members. So that's all we've been doing for 2 weeks. Is
I was just curious.
filling information requests. So.
On a monthly basis,
Yeah.
we review expenditures, in all funds. We go through the list of what was paid. We get all of that. That's also published in the paper. That's what we review on a monthly basis. We review the certified audit, the annual report, those things. A lot of funding goes to personnel. The piece that we see with personnel is we approve personnel resignations, selections, transfers. We do that. And when it comes to negotiations, we approve the contract, the negotiations for whatever, but we don't look at individual buildings on a regular basis. We don't review that. We don't review what's staff numbers, what they're paid. We don't look at that. We are looking at our expenditure spending outside of personnel.
This is why I gave this to the board last night. This is the unspent authorized budget report for Mount Pleasant Community School District from the Iowa Department of Management. I ran it. This was run on March 19. So when you're talking about data, and I went through all of that maximum district cost and the miscellaneous income and the instructional support levy, the revenue, it's all coming from here. And the expenditures are here from fiscal year 19. So that's why I gave that to that's why I have given it to the board. And specifically for this forecasting, fiscal year 19-20, all the way up through 2025, all of that is straight from the Department of Management website. It's straight from the DOM. All of those numbers are these numbers right here. Now, when you get into forecasting, obviously fiscal year 26 isn't done yet. So this is not bad data. This is actual data that we're working from. And it's, the forecasting, if you want to say, well, you're way off on your forecasting, I mean, we could talk about what that looks like, but this is accurate data.
Yeah, forecasting it's no different than it's gonna be 75 and sunny tomorrow, right? There's a percentage of that's accurate. So, Jessica, there's one tab on your sheet that I guess I don't understand from a revenue stream standpoint. Wisdom Quest and Homeschool Systems Program. Are those revenue streams for the district?
No, they're not revenue, they're expenses.
Because they're $500,000 in expenses for those two programs, and if they're not creating that in revenue.
We receive at-risk dollars that fund Wisdom Quest
Sure.
from the state, and then we also receive homeschool assistance, a supplemental weighting on our certified enrollment based on the number of kids that go from the state. So even though they're standalone programs, they're part of our district, so we do get weighting and dollars for them. So they're not operating in the red.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Can I ask a clarification question?
Yeah.
So with homeschool,
Uh-huh.
it's weighted at like 0.3, I think?
Depends.
Something,
Depends on,
okay.
It depends on what the kids, if you dual enroll, you get additional weighting. If you take other classes, you get additional weighting.
Is homeschool like its own dedicated account within the general fund, the revenue in, the expenses out,
Yes.
all have to
Correct.
self-balance?
Yes.
So that's one, food service is another?
Right.
Okay.
Right. It's not its own fund, like you have general fund management.
Restricted
board,
account, is that
Categorical.
categorical account? Okay.
So could we have made some of these decisions that we're making right now, these cuts a year ago? We could, the 900, the 800, whatever, we could have done that.
We
a
could
year
have,
ago.
but we didn't need to, Kevin, because we had the money, like in the bank. It was from COVID funds.
Yeah.
We had the money and now we're just spending that money down.
So we're
But we-
spending that, we're still spending that, some of that money.
We are, but we knew that, we knew it when we hired those people, it was short term. And at some point, 4 years down the road, they were gonna have to be let go, and we're at that point. Okay, that was phase one. Phase two is the bigger issue, and going forward, in my opinion, as to what we maybe need to cut, and that doesn't have to do with COVID dollars, that has to do with a district change, a change in a district, right?
What does a 4-day or a 4-day week, does that save quite a bit of money, or? The schools that are doing it really like it, the students and parents that I talked to, but.
You haven't looked at it?
We haven't looked at it. I mean, we just haven't. There would obviously be some savings on transportation because you're running buses,
Sure.
4 days a week. You'd have some savings probably from, maybe, if you were shutting the buildings down on the 4th day. Paraeducators, some support staff, you would have savings there. The food service is its own fund, it's not part of the general fund. Food service is its own fund, so you'd have savings there, so.
Maybe some of our demographics, though, it would hurt the families to go down to 4-day work week because you just don't have that home life.
That's a legitimate concern. I think that's one of my biggest concerns from a board perspective is that those students, and we know that you could do, food, part of it is nutrition 5 days a week, making sure that they're supervised by somebody and given love and education 5 days a week. Not all kids have that at home, right? Everybody comes from a different place, so if we could provide that for 5 days, those elementary kids especially, right? When you get older, it's different, but from the elementary perspective, giving those kids structure 5 days a week is a good thing.
And I thought that you showed last night that our demographics were heavier than other schools in that situation.
We have 44%, a little over 44% free and reduced, which sometimes correlates to that. There's some correlation to that.
Yeah, this is for 2025, the free and reduced in Mount Pleasant. And I want to say this, every district has its own story. We have our own story. And as far as a designation based on student performance, Mount Pleasant is considered commendable. Our free and reduced percentage last year was 44.4%. You can see for the other districts there. Our English language learners in Mount Pleasant, 8.6%. Or English language learners, 16%. A little over 16% of our kids on IEPs. That's our story right there. And this is the aggregate of our student performance, which is commendable. And so again, I'm not knocking these other districts, but when it's come up in meetings, I said this last night, we need to be more like this district, we need to be more like this district. Well, our aggregate of student performance is right there. That's the other regional districts.
In this chart is commendable below acceptable? I don't know.
No,
that.
it's above.
It's above.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
above, yeah.
You can have an overall score that puts you in a higher category, but if you have a targeted area, it'll take you down a weighting. So if you see that Fairfield has a higher overall score, but they're acceptable, that's because one of their cohorts is targeted, which means they're
Special
not meeting.
education for Fairfield.
So their rating then goes down.
All of this, if you're interested, just again, Google Iowa School Performance Profiles. It's put together by the Department of Education.
It's time for an Obscene Profit Center break, and then we will be right back.
Pfeiffer Sawmill, your local home for kiln-dried lumber and affordable trailer decking to your specifications. All in Rome, Iowa, serving Mount Pleasant and all surrounding areas. Do you like to throw a hatchet? They've got your board. Call Ben today at 319-931-4544. Sanity. It comes in handy when you need it, and Sanity Coffee House will serve it up through coffee and pastry like God intended. If the beans were any fresher, you'd smack them. Sanity is home of the Mad Cow and Caramel Knowledge. Low on energy? Try their Lotus drinks. Special frappes and iced coffees await. Hungry? Go for a whole hog or a porcalypse, and a mac and cheese wrap will satisfy. Always high-speed Wi-Fi, so pull in and get your Sanity at 104 South Iris Street, Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
Yeah, and I mean, I spent time in Central Decatur schools yesterday. They are 65% free and reduced lunch. They go a 4-day school week, and it works for them. There's 7,000 people in the county, so that county is smaller than Mount Pleasant itself. So it is, I mean, everyone's got a story, right? And so I think that's essentially, that is something I will agree on. We have our own story.
Is that, do you have a lot of 4 10-hour
No.
employers?
No, because it's a very rural farming community. To Lonnie's point though, their CTE programs are top notch. I mean, they're building $300,000 homes to sell back to the community.
We are
kids.
too. You know we are too, right?
Actually, I don't.
Yeah.
So
We are too.
they have half a
And
dozen.
that's no funds going from the school.
And same with theirs too, right? So, but those again, I don't see any marketing for that type of stuff. You know, they have an all turf field, all weather track, all funded, and they have a ton of community support, but they also knew their identity. And they know their culture and they feed into it. And sometimes I wonder if we lose sight of that. And again, I'm not in any of the meetings, I'm not in any of the conversations, I'm just telling you my experience that I had yesterday. It was a whole different environment, and it's a smaller school. You know, they share the superintendent's a shared resource, but he's also the bus driver, right? He drove us to and from, and he's like, I drive bus at least a couple times a week because I have to. And it was just a different environment, but their facilities weren't, you wouldn't argue they were state of the art, but I wouldn't say they were dilapidated either. And they're drawing kids from a lot of different places, but they also have their fair share of challenges. So I think the message is there's a story for everyone, but they find a way to make it work. They're doing a lot of their own basically grow to table type of stuff. They're raising beef to sell back into or basically to use in their kitchens, stuff like that. So they're finding ways it's good for the kids, it's good for the school, they're selling back to the community. I mean, they're doing a lot of different things.
I want to go back to something that I asked last night and kind of got a little bit of hope from Mr. Henriksen. I said, are there any more cuts to be made? He said, maybe we can go back to the table and look. So when I'm talking about management, I'm not picking on anybody, okay? I know how I have to run my business. And when I go to the bank and said, I want to borrow some money, they said, you didn't do very good last year. They don't give me any. What do I do? You fix it. So I'm thinking possibility, maybe there's some more cuts to be made, maybe there's not. But I think we gotta go look at those. And I think once we look at those, we have been looking at Salem, you're our easy cut. I'm just gonna tell you from my opinion, from my side of the thing, it's an easy fix. It's a scapegoat. You know what a scapegoat is? When you're in trouble and don't know what to do. Sometimes you take the easy way out. You guys are an easy way out. Now, have we looked at everything? I don't know. I hope we can look a little bit more, look a little bit deeper and see what's going on. But yeah, you're in an awkward situation, and I don't have an answer.
The 2-year approach was a board decision, right? I'm not to say, hey, we wanna do these cuts over a 2-year period, is that?
I recommended that,
Okay.
yeah.
We didn't wanna, nobody wanted to,
No
nobody
one wants
wanted to
to do
take
cuts.
1.8 out of million at one time.
I did,
Well,
I
actually, yes,
did.
Josh
I
did,
wanted
but
to be,
No one wants to do
rip the
cuts.
Band-Aid off, but,
you
Could
were
you
outvoted.
do
Or-
a
or
4-day week for the older kids, like high school, since a
Like a
lot of them
hybrid?
leave like at lunchtime anyway for the day? Or would that not get their days in they need? I don't know how all that works, cause there's so many more staff there, I don't know.
yeah, I don't know if that, that's something, I've never heard of that, not that but I don't know if you could do that.
I just hear, like, I'll have a high schooler next year, so I'm not completely sure of the situation, but I hear parents saying for kids, I don't know how the schedule is, but they leave pretty early. And maybe there's more to that I don't understand.
They do, a lot of them do.
There is an 8th hour, there have been some changes on open campus, prior to, if you had online classes, you could go, open campus, you could go take care of those at home. There's been some changes to that, so more kids stay, like, I have a sophomore, he had an online class, he had to be at school to do that in the library, so there have been some changes on the flexibility of the open campus as new leadership has came in, and they've looked at, if we keep, one of the things that the high school has looked at is how can we have those older students mentor younger students, and if all of the seniors leave, how is that helping to develop the freshmen and sophomores? And so the leadership has been looking at that as well on their policies and how those classes are run, so they've been looking at that, so how they
And
can
that's
make it
kinda how
better.
I view the grade schools even, not having the older kids there for the younger kids. I think that's important too.
I do too.
That's a whole nother thing, but.
Well, I don't blame the board for this at all, but education has never been sold to this community. I started on the board, I think it was 2013. Okay, and I can tell you what I consider to be horror stories. That has to change. We have to get the community behind the school district. And that opens up some other possibilities, but that's not going to happen overnight. You know, we have to have a consistent story that makes sense and get it out there.
I think you gotta do something too, and I know, I look at the Salem school, the support of the people at Salem, and I go, one thing I volunteer is at the, carnival.
Mm.
Have any of you been to the carnival at Salem? I'm telling you, the turnout and the money made there, it's remarkable. And it's a great thing. It's so neat to see. And I'm not saying anything, but I mean, that's one way. I mean, you get the people at Salem, they're behind it. You bring them, however you do it, whether, you know, I don't know what's gonna happen, but you gotta get those Salem families involved in Mount Pleasant to be on board. I think you could have a lot of good potential things happening. But it goes to selling your things, but there's a lot of support.
We're trying to sell a new school without you guys. And it's never gonna happen. When we go to the voting polls and we shut you down, you're not gonna vote for the new school. Probably never gonna happen, you know? It's gonna be tough. So how do we get you guys on board? How do we say, hey, you know, you're a part of it. We're not, Salem and Mount Pleasant, we gotta quit that rhetoric. We're one district, one school, one people, one community, one family. We gotta get together and make that happen. And if that's all about dollar bills, we've made a mistake. We gotta look at us. Sometimes, you know, in a business, you might not make the greatest decision based upon dollars, but in long term. And I think we gotta look at a long-term thing here, you know? My opinion.
I agree.
Kevin, you can't blame that all on Salem though, because talk to a lot of your Mount Pleasant people. They say they will not vote,
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
for that bond.
I'm
Yeah,
not-
I mean, I know a lot of Salem people might not,
Right, well, and I don't know that.
yeah,
necessarily.
I'm just saying,
that
yeah,
was
that's
in
not all Salem.
No, but I mean, if we come against
Yeah.
you, you're not gonna be so much for us probably. I don't know, I mean, I'm just, think it's time to throw some ideas out on the table that are maybe more than dollars.
I'm all ears.
Yeah, and I know you are. So, can you show us more reductions that you can do and find in there? I mean, I don't know, maybe you went as far as you can go, I'm not questioning that, but I said, is there some more? Because I know the ad hoc, right? We're putting kind of pressure on them, I got that. Didn't they make, one of the recommendations was our neighborhood schools and keeping Salem? Was that one of their, was that number 4 on the list?
That was
I guess I can.
Yeah, it was number 4.
So I'm thinking.
You can't go back to neighborhood schools and have there's no way to go back to you have to have 2 sections. If you're gonna go K to 5 in every elementary building, you have to have 2 sections. So that necessitates, you're gonna have in all of those buildings, 2 sections of every grade level. So you gotta have, that means you're gonna have to have 6 sections there, 1 section at Salem. You have 7 sections. Because you can't go down to one section. That was one of the reasons that we went to neighborhood schools, because of our enrollment. So that we could, and we didn't do anything with Salem, so that we could go down to 5 sections where the numbers allowed for that. And that was a way to save some money. So you can't go back to neighborhood schools and not go 2 sections of grade levels at every building. Except Salem, you're gonna go 1 section.
You can go back to neighborhood and still close Salem and have 6 sections just in town at that point, right?
You could, yeah, you could.
So why can't they hybrid that from, like they did back in the day of, from 4th and 5th grade, of them only going to Van Allen? And then when you had those neighborhood schools of Harlan and Lincoln, you did have 2 sections. In fact, I think in one year, I think our grade was so big, Harlan neighborhood-wise, I think they had 3 sections through there.
Well, yeah, and at that time, you had Saunders School as well.
I was the last one in Saunders School, second
So-
grade. 92. But I didn't know why you can't go to a hybrid. When you go back to the neighborhood schools, it comes down to, like what Salem does as a community, you get back to neighborhood schools, I am going to be all into Lincoln School. Whether Salem closes or not, we're coming to Mount Pleasant, right? But if my kid's gonna go to Salem for 4 years, I'm gonna put 4 years into Lincoln School, Lincoln PTA as a neighborhood, because it's ownership of.
So the master plans that we've looked at a couple different times has 1 or 2 elementary buildings, so you can build that. If all of and you see it, some other districts, not comparing, have made that successful because they have all their kids. And then you're not dividing resources, you're not dividing parents, you're not dividing families. If you have a pre-K 5 building, or even if you go down to 2, then you're invested for 3 years in this school, or 4 years and 3 years in this school, and you move together. Yes, for 1 year, if you have kids that are a couple grades apart, they're gonna be in 2 different buildings, but that is probably what we've seen the future can look like, and we can reduce costs, but give our kids more because you have all of the resources in the right place. So that is what we've seen the future could look like. We haven't agreed upon it, but we know it's one of those things that would allow us to reduce some extra duplicate staff. Which that then, if you can reduce those costs, you can give your kids more on the educational side of things. And that's, with declining enrollment, whether we can get another 50 students in or not, you don't want to have your staff travel. You want everybody in the right place, right? So you can give them what they have. Well, that means less buildings. That means all of our kids together. To do that, we have to close all of the elementary, or figure out how to, with where all the elementary buildings are, there's not suitable place to continue to build on and make a safe pickup and drop off. We all know that the neighborhood schools present those challenges, which is why the first time that we looked at it before COVID, we were looking at, could we put an elementary campus at Maple Leaf? Could we move the activities out to the high school and then repurpose Maple Leaf for that? We did look at that. That wasn't a popular choice, but we looked at it because even back then, we knew that the future, we wanted all of our kids together. We didn't, so they all received the same education. I don't want a kid, well, when Lincoln was a blue ribbon school, right? Everybody wanted to go to Lincoln. Van Allen was targeted, so they were whatever, school in need of assistance. So then the district had to allow any student that wanted to leave Van Allen because they were in that neighborhood, they could go. So that made an overcrowding at Lincoln because it was a blue ribbon school. But we want all of our kids to have the same opportunities and receive the same education, which is why the push was made to go to grade alike. Not popular with keeping your kids together, and there is more to education, but that was one of the reasons, because the future, even back then, looked like less buildings, more kids together, so we can utilize all of our resources together. We haven't agreed, the board hasn't really discussed that, because since November, we've had superintendent that we had to hire, and we've been into budgets, so we had the ad hoc committee that presented to us, we haven't discussed that. We have 2 other things that we haven't looked at as this board, as this group, so.
Does the grade alike negate the blue ribbon versus at risk or at need schools? Because again, if you have if you have an issue at a Van Allen today from a bullying or behavior standpoint, what happens? Because you mentioned blue ribbon school and you mentioned Van Allen being at risk, therefore they can move to any building. Does it negate that then?
That was, yeah, that was before. I don't know that they do blue ribbon schools, and the school in need of assistance, did that go away with COVID, those classifications?
What you had when you were neighborhood schools was disparity among the schools. Van Allen, the largest of the schools, and because of the boundaries, the free and reduced percentage at Van Allen was about 70%.
Sure.
Where at Lincoln, at the time, it was well below 50%. So our own community has its own demographics of where people live. Sure. And so it had a much higher special education population. That was one of the reasons, that was one of the things that we talked about, and one of the reasons that we went to grade alike buildings was equity for all kids, and instructional equity, opportunity equity. So.
But no, right now, to your question, if you feel like if a parent feels they have no other choice.
Right. Well, I mean, we heard at the hearing from Gwen, whose daughter was being bullied, so she fought to get her building transferred to Salem, right? So.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I was part of those conversations, John, so let's just be careful with what we say, because Katie and I were fighting to get our kid there as well.
No student has been denied a transfer.
I think the message we got was, we do not allow it. And again, we got through it, we're good now. I'm not saying it was a bad thing, but.
I made a decision for your child to go to Salem.
And I appreciate you.
And so, what I'm saying is, no student has been denied a transfer to Salem.
You denied first, and then finally let them go.
We have always waited until registration to get well, that's the truth. I go back to my desk and get the transfer requests.
Again, my initial question was this, we heard Gwen tell her story about her daughter who was being bullied, and then she fought for the transfer, right? So my original question.
She was asked to wait until registration
and that's okay.
for the transfer.
That's okay.
That's what happened.
And it probably, I'm just telling you, I heard her story. My question was, in grade alike today, when there's a situation like that, is there a protocol to help the child get out of that situation? Because I don't know if I understand it.
So we talked about, everybody left the board meeting last night. We discussed as a board the anti-bullying policies and the school board policies, right? So we've heard, and so we had a discussion about that because we wanted to seek to understand more. And our processes in place, right? And so it's working the processes and trying to get the right resources involved to solve the problem, but also as a district, provide the educational needs of the student. What Dr. Butler did share is that we were talking about grants, right? She's applied for a substantial grant on therapeutic classroom rehab, that kind of thing, because we know that we have those needs, and those needs are higher at Bain Allen specifically. The behavior interventionist position that the board approved 2 years ago, that has only been filled for about a half of a year, somebody has accepted that position, and they will start in the fall. They're starting with some training now, and we hope that that resource helps to start to solve more of those issues that are underlying and help deal with those things, so those situations are resolved quicker and better. Dr. Butler spoke on that a little bit last night. The behavior interventionist will be at Bain Allen next year. They're gonna go wherever the student need is.
Sure.
The student need right now is greatest at Bain Allen, so that resource is gonna be placed there. That was one position that we agreed as a board that we supported because we knew that was important to the district and our students.
Okay, as parents, let's get this out in the open. You asked for a request. Were you told no, or were you told to wait until registration?
We were told they don't allow building transfers.
You were told they don't allow. I mean, would that been in part of this comment? You don't
It was
allow
not in the
until
email, so I can't
registration?
prove it. It was a
Oh.
phone call. I emailed and John called me back. I remember specifically because we were out of state at the time. And so then I called the State Board of Education to see if that was true. And they said that's up to a parent. That is not like, it's not like an open enrollment. Cause in my mind, I was like, maybe you have to, it's more like an open enrollment or something.
What is up to a parent?
A building transfer.
That's not a parent decision. I mean, you can't.
Between you and though, it's not that you have to go through the state or anything for it. Cause I was to the point, we were going to see, like push it through them if they could get it to happen. Because I've never heard such a thing, because I knew kids were doing it in town between the schools. That's why I was like flabbergasted. We couldn't go to Salem, but we could transfer to Lincoln from Harlan.
No, we've denied lots of transfers.
You did say that. You said you had denied them before. But there was not a good reason for this one
Well,
to
class
deny
size
it.
was one. We did hear when our daughter was in, it was class size.
Well,
Salem
for-
was
that's
overpopulated.
different.
We understood that.
Her class had 30 students, so we understood that. This class had 20. You did allow it in the end, so I'm not, like,
We're not mad about that.
in the end, you did allow it, but if I
that
wouldn't have
message to
kept
Tina.
pushing it, it wouldn't have happened.
To Tina.
And we hear other people say it. I don't know what.
Well, what other people? I need to know the other people.
Yes, I
'cause
will make sure they're okay
I'm
with
not
that.
getting those transfer requests.
Well, I don't know recently,
Yeah,
but this was
I'm
over
not
the
getting
last,
You have
Gwen was
message
the
to
last one
Tina.
we heard.
over the last 4 years, but like.
If
again, this
the
is-
argument,
No,
if
I
the
know.
argument
I'm
is that
saying-
Salem's enrollment is lower than it could be because we're not allowing requests, it's not accurate. If that's the argument.
That is the argument, because I do
it's not
question
accurate.
that. I'm glad it's not an argument anymore. At the time, it made me fear that could definitely be something, because it was a common theme we were hearing.
Yeah,
There are
And a
13
lot
kids
of-
from Mount Pleasant that are attending Salem Elementary.
That wasn't an issue.
I can't believe you're telling me you didn't tell me no.
Well,
Like,
we've heard
have
from
this.
we've heard from two specifically. Gwen was one, and then Whitney
I
Shahan was the other, but those were the two latest ones, and they both spoke at the hearing.
Yeah.
On
You
their
sent this to
situation,
him when?
so.
I know both
Do-
parties here, and I know you both to be true and honest. And I was just trying to think if there's a miscommunication.
There
It
was at the
happens.
time.
Yeah, so it happens.
and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse with it. My concern was if we're losing enrollment because of it, and that's why I bring it up. That's the only reason I bring it up, but he said we aren't, so that answers that.
I like the truth, I really do. I like to dig and find and grind it until it can't be nothing else that comes up, so that's what, I just asked, and I thought.
Sarah Donnelly, that was another one I
Yeah.
heard. She asked to have her kids. I don't know if that's true, but like a couple years ago, I heard that when there was issues at Lincoln. I heard that they couldn't. Now, maybe it was they just wanted to say that because they really didn't want to go to Salem, but maybe maybe they wanted to make it look like it was an option, like, I don't know. But I can't think of everybody off the top of my head, but I have heard this over the years.
They told their 3 kids, no big secrets on Facebook.
Yeah.
They're going to the Christian school. You know, Aaron made a good statement last night. He goes, you know, you're not gonna put new carpet in the house when you got a leaky roof. And I thought, yeah, that's true, you gotta fix the roof. Salem is not the leaky roof. And we're trying to fix that, causing it to leak, and it's not. It's just not, in my opinion. I just wanna be upfront with you guys and be honest and say, here it is, let's go. You guys are not the leaky roof. You don't need fixed. Everything I hear about your school, I don't hear anything bad, like, oh man, these kids are out of control, we can't stand it. But I get texts and emails every day, our kids are being bullied, our kids are doing this, our kids are, but I don't get that from Salem. I love Salem, I don't even never been there, but it's just, everything I hear, it's good about it, you know? And so I'm thinking, let's dig in a little deeper, let's find the truth, let's figure out what we're doing and where we're going. And I appreciate
The
you
truth is,
guys
there's $1.8 million that has to be reduced.
Right.
Yeah, I think at the end, if we're gonna run it by like a business, we gotta figure out how to market what we got. Gotta attract people in, grow the revenue.
Yeah.
Cut expenses, grow the revenue, that's 2 simple things. Do it safely, do it with quality, and cost happens naturally. So, if we can figure out why kids are leaving the district, and I've talked to several myself, because I know them personally, it's a cultural thing. It's not about offerings, it's cultural.
You can build a Taj Mahal, but if you don't fix what's inside, they're not gonna come.
Yep. A lot of factories I've been in weren't built just to draw people in. They've been there for a long time, but they have a positive culture which draws people in and keeps them there.
Okay, so how do we, figure out what's wrong with the culture and fix it? If there's something that can be done to delay the budget or to do something there, how do we figure out what the problem is with the culture and fix it? That's the real question. Where is the issue of, besides demographic, children leaving, why are people going to Christian school? Why are people homeschooling? Where's this falling out at?
Why are there 7,300 fewer people in public education this year than there were last year?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, is it demographic or is it something with our culture? That's what I mean. Can we dig into that? I know something has to be done with the budget. I'm just wondering, can we do part of the 800,000, delay the other part until we figure out what's going on with the culture? If we do better marketing, if we find out why people are leaving and can bring them back, if we can go to our legislation and find out, can we get that money back into public schools that went to private? You know, is there something we can do there, which is gonna be time consuming? Any idea how long that would take? 3 months, 6 months, 3 years? Does anybody have any idea? Have you worked with this before? Anybody?
I think we all really wanna see Mount Pleasant grow, and I mean, I know in the day, you know, when you talked about your different school districts, Mount Pleasant was always highly, you know, spoken of. I mean, people wanted to send their kids to Mount Pleasant. And I don't think this is just happening to Mount Pleasant now. I think all school districts are struggling. I don't know what all the changes are, but definitely, I mean, I want my grandchildren to be in a good school at Mount Pleasant, which, you know, that's what we're all aiming for.
We're all Mount Pleasant School District. It doesn't matter what location we're
We've
in.
had a lot of conversation on this, and I feel as though we're completely off topic of general fund budget reduction overview for the board. I haven't heard you guys talk yet. Obviously, this is a finance policy meeting. Do you have any questions regarding the general fund budget reduction overview?
I had my questions on that topic last night, so I don't have any more for today on that agenda.
Mark?
John, one question I got, how many, when you factored in, closing of Salem, how many kids were factored in that you lose?
The only factoring in of lost kids is the 35 students that we That was the average, historical average, so that's the only loss of kids. That's the only loss of kids that is factored into, those forecasting.
So with the closing, you're not factoring in any open enrolled kids going elsewhere?
I just said, what I factored in is a loss of 35 students, certified enrollment. That's looking at the DE projections to 29-30.
I think we can each do our own, cause that's gonna be your revenues, right? It's a complete guess.
Yeah.
No one knows.
Yeah, it's all a risk management type analysis.
Right. So, I mean, I would be on the side that there's probably going to be more losses in revenue, but to what extent? No idea, and then we'll have to factor that into our budgets for that next year, that additional $500,000 loss or whatever it'd be for the next year.
Even lose 20 students, you're looking at 162,000, which is a pretty high percentage of what you're trying to save. And that's very likely.
And we as parents polled a lot of the parents, and it was above that. And those were just the ones that got back with us.
No, Josh, is it time to invest money to make money?
That's what
You know, we keep
trying
talking
to
about
say.
closing and closing and closing. Is it, do you show investment in these schools and draw students in?
Investment as in capital.
Like, you know,
Marketing.
building, you know, do you add on to Lincoln, do you add on to Salem? You know, do you add on, you know, you talk about Lincoln needing, you know, we have classrooms, but not the special rooms that you need. Do you spend the money and put a gym at Lincoln and use the old gym for your special needs, and you could put a ceiling type floor for storage, cause they say there's not enough storage out there, you'd have an upstairs for storage. You know, do you invest money to draw, to make money, to get your revenue up?
Would you be hoping that a capital investment in that would just attract new students because of the newer building, the remodeled building?
Your best, this is my opinion, your best chance of attracting students is the Salem area because of where it's located and of all the towns around it, is your best chance of upping the revenue for the district. If you look at it as a revenue generating area. I understand all the, so many buildings in this, but if you pull in, keep what you have there and pull in 35 students if you fill it, I don't know, but, you know, is it time to look at a different way of doing it, you know?
It's a market-rich environment, potentially.
It is. I mean, you sit there and you look at Central Lee. My goodness, they're open, you know, they've doubled in students in the last 5 or 6 years. And they sit out in the middle of the country, and I understand they're all one location.
Two buildings.
Okay, two. Oh, yeah.
It's one campus, two buildings, right?
Yeah, so,
Right.
however you wanna say it, but you know, they're drawing from everywhere and anywhere. You
Yeah,
know, they're.
I know a thing or two about
I know
Central.
you do, John, but I think Salem area could have the same potential of drawing and creating revenue for the district.
I promise you Waco didn't build new buildings to attract people in, they're marketing their strengths. And that's what's drawing them in. I'm a proud Waco grad, I wanted my kids to go there, I'll tell you that right now. But they're drawing in because of the strengths they have. What's that?
You lost.
Mount Pleasant is a great school district.
To Salem.
It's a good loss, right?
So, anyway, that's my 2 cents, Josh, on what?
So,
I agree with
Agree
Mark.
with you, I agree.
financially, it's to keep, like your thing is to keep Salem open. Obviously, we have the financial budget where, how are you addressing that?
I think you have to do both. You have to try to attack both from different angles, right? And again, I'm looking at it from an outsider, when I've been in this world in manufacturing for 20 years, where you find efficiencies, you find costs, and it's 10,000 here, 20,000 here, 30,000 here, and before long, you're at that number you're talking about, and maybe not stretch. I mean, there's 9,000 we spend on a book fair that I don't fully understand, and I would question. And there's some other stuff in here that I don't understand, that I would say, hey, you add those up, you might get to your number quicker. And if you can do what Mark's talking about and draw revenue in, they could offset each other faster than what's currently forecasted, but it's a risk.
Once a month or whatever to
What
this.
if we
It's all
just
risk.
tone some of the
Tell Judy to
reductions a little
mention
bit
that.
farther out, instead of doing 800,000 this year? What if you do, well, you did the 900,000 instead of the full 800, if you do the part that doesn't include Salem, just to see what happens over the next year, push more on marketing, push more on community. If you wanna keep Salem, you gotta get involved in Mount Pleasant. You know, it's a Mount Pleasant school district. It needs to be all of us. And if you push that out just one more year, and if things don't turn around, if the numbers don't come up somehow, if people don't bring their kids back that are open enrolled out, then we are gonna have to consider that again.
I think you're
It's-
also, you go another year, you potentially have some attrition, right? That benefits in the general fund buckets. Businesses do this all the time. So, some win, some lose, right? So it's always a risk. It's always a risk.
I agree with what Josh is saying. You put the 25 million that we have, and you start deducting. And you get to the bottom, you're either positive or, I know, I do it every day. So don't say it's a big deal. I'm on the board because of that. I wanna spend some time saying, okay, we got this, we spend here either at the bottom, if we gotta chomp and cut, you chomp and cut. You just, we're not at the place where we have the luxury of building on a new lighthouse edition for 400 million. We don't have that luxury. We're gonna chomp.
But you don't wanna chomp so much that we lose our programs or what makes Mount Pleasant
But we
strong.
have
That's
to-
gonna be the hard part.
Yeah, but we have to get to that place where we say, okay, we're out of money. What are you gonna do? You gotta stop spending somewhere.
The
That's my opinion, but I'm
certified
not
enrollment
being critical.
projections, what does the future look like? Does it look like 4 elementary buildings and 1 in Salem? Is that what the future looks like? The certified enrollment projections from the DE are certified enrollment. They're not open enrolled out, it's certified enrollment. They're projecting us to be at 1,500 and I believe 38 is, if I remember correctly. Mickey, when you were in school, we had class sizes of 150, 160, 170 kids. We have an incoming kindergarten class, when you combine them together, of 95. You know, the demographics, we don't live outside those demographics. We have to think about, we have to decide what the future is going to be. That's what's on the table, is what's the future. And if you know, you can, I mean, I showed what, if you do the 985 and don't do the 815,000, you know, then you're back up to spending 104% of the revenue, and hoping that we get, you know, increased enrollment. I welcome, if you want somebody else to, we had 2 outside people look at the numbers and say, you need to do this. If you want the new superintendent to look at the numbers, that's perfectly fine by me. We have to address what the future of Mount Pleasant is gonna look like. And we have to address the budget shortfall that we have, so.
So the decline in birth rate does play a factor into the decline of enrollment, but I feel like instead of looking from the outside, taking outsiders looking in, you know, our community members, our parents, the people living here in the district that are having families. We need to be looking at their values and what's gonna draw them to the district. They're the ones procreating that we have got to bring in that are enrolling out. And I feel like that's where the focus should be. When we're trying to focus on the strengths to market, to bring people in, how to keep them, how to maybe get them back. Sure, there's budget cuts in there. You have to include that. It's inevitable. But I just feel like a lot of the focus is on something that's out of our control, but there is still an area that it is in our control.
But you wanna make sure that we keep Salem open. You have to make sure that we keep Salem open.
Well, the community very much values it, but look at the community of Mount Pleasant. What do they value? What can we do to get enrollment up too? It's not just about Salem, but we're sticking up for what we value to be the best for our kids. You gotta spark that fire here in Mount Pleasant. What is valued for their kids? What are they gonna get behind and fight behind? You know, we love the community at the elementary in Salem. It's not just Salem, it's part of the Mount Pleasant district. We wanna be a part of this district and we're fighting for it. We want it. But we do think that there is some good values that attract a lot.
I don't disagree, but even if you look at Salem's enrollment I think it peaked out at like 121 kids. And I don't know if that included, that was served enrollment. I don't know if that included, well, it would have included open enrolled. I don't know what the numbers on open enrollment was, but you're at 121 and now at 87. It's the same data. It's the same data. It's the same trending data.
Salem's losing people, Mount Pleasant's losing people, and we just,
The
we need
difference
to
is,
consolidate.
are we sending as many to Mount Pleasant as we're getting open, or building transfer to Salem? Through like Title I, IEP, I don't know what, special education, if I would say that, like, how many are we sending out that would be there if we had those services? Just out of curiosity, I know we don't have those services, but would that increase us by a significant amount?
We had kindergarten, or preschool, which now comes into Mount Pleasant.
I don't know if you can answer that question or not. I guess I had a different question.
I don't know. I'd
What's
have
your
to-
ratio open enroll out to open enroll in?
For the district?
Yeah, because if you look at that number and you can eat into that number and eat into that market, your revenues offset your expenses pretty dramatically, pretty quickly.
That's why I asked what the other open enrollments were with the other elementary schools, to try to help to compare apples to apples a little more, because that's a revenue in that you're getting from Salem now.
How do you play to win to gain market share? That's what you gotta do. That's a business.
I just think Salem's location, because we draw from the south, we draw a lot from the Houghton area, from the Catholic area, and Hillsborough area, and where in Mount Pleasant, I think it's harder to draw in because you've got, you know, your school's so close, New London, Waco, this and that, but people with small children don't wanna send their kids like clear into Mount Pleasant, but when they're elementary, they come just to Salem. And if we could market that again, but numerous people, they don't wanna start their kids and then, you know, have them there a year or two and close.
It doesn't stop with Salem, right? You got people that live in Trenton that open enroll to Waco. I know 3 kids right now that do that. One of them's a faculty in Mount Pleasant. So, it's the same distance. So how do you gain market share and how do you play to win? You're gonna run it like a business. How do you play to win?
There's a lot of people that talk about open enrolling their kids that are in the district,
It's not always about new facilities. You can build
So
the
what-
nicest,
what
newest
is that?
facility. It's what are we doing inside the 4 walls that's detouring people? I don't know if we can answer that today. I think that was the question that was asked. But you don't know how you got here, you don't know how to fix it.
Do you have any information on that, John, I know she brought up about the people that open enrollment out, but just your experience in all the years you've been here, do you feel like there's something culturally that we can do better, either as a community? Is it because we've lost
No one has
factories?
ever, I've done, at least 2 open enrollment surveys.
Okay.
No one talks about culture. They talk about, daycare. They talk about, workplace. I'm taking my kid, cause I work in that direction. I'm taking my kid that direction. It's just easier for me because my daycare is in that direction.
Didn't we spend money on a survey not too long ago, and some of the results said neighborhood schools were probably more favorable in that survey? I heard that, I don't wanna confirm that's rumor or fact.
Corey, you could have somebody else look at it. You obviously would need to.
I didn't see the
You can't
results,
go
I just
back
heard
to
that.
neighborhood schools. You have to have at least 2 sections of each grade level in neighborhood schools. So you're gonna just keep running 4 elementary buildings if you're doing that.
And again, if you look at it from what Mark just said, where you invest to potentially gain the market share that we need to outrun the expenditures, you may have a fighting chance. It's always risky. It's risky in business.
We did it for years. We kept seeing decline enrollment, we changed. Why do we think going back to what we were doing 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it's gonna increase enrollment? We already had the decline going.
We were positive in the unallocated budget though, then all of a sudden we made the decision and now we're in a different decision.
Our expenses keep increasing
They're
and the
always
SSA isn't keeping up with it,
So the
right?
nature of business, right, you find more market share to take. How do we do that?
Part of it is you develop a culture of excellence. That's part of it.
I feel like we're.
And that's
Beating
one
a dead
thing.
horse, I get it, but again, it's simple business.
But that doesn't happen overnight.
Why do people choose to homeschool so much now? Like, think about it, because they're not happy with the public school system. A lot of it, I get some's religion, some's other reasons, but like, just to give you an example, at Salem, I feel so comfortable leaving my student there every day. Like, it is the next best thing to me. I would consider homeschool. That was like my next option. We've done it a little bit before. I loved it. But like, when parents feel good about the culture, all that would be such a big buy-in. More than a new building, more than anything. If you could get Mount Pleasant, I'm not saying it's all Mount Pleasant people, but if you could get people having that buy-in in Mount Pleasant where they feel that culture at your elementary schools, I do think they would grow.
Well, you're saying, I guess what you're not saying is that there's bad culture in the other buildings and.
There's bad culture in Salem too, I get it, but like personally, I
feel like this is a
could not.
finance committee, we're now at culture of the school district. Do you guys have any more questions regarding number 3?
I need to be home at 5 o'clock, so I think we need to cover the other topics. Okay.
Thank you. I'm not saying bad cultural questions. I'm not saying.
If we can touch base sometime, I'm glad to listen to confirm some of what I've got questions on, so, thank you.
Thank you guys as well on answering the questions.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
What was that gentleman's name, Corey?
Taxpayers of the Mount Pleasant Community School District, as well as district representatives and the Board of Education, have got tough decisions to make. My hope is they will do the best for the students in their final actions. Thank you for watching, and make sure to give this episode a like, follow, and subscribe. It is free. Thanks to my sponsors, Griner Auto Body, Car Doctor, McDonald Boneyard, Your Choice Family Restaurant, Girling Repair, B&B Propane, and the family of Jet Stops, CW Tree Trimming LLC, and Iowa Technology Systems. I'm your host, John Bain. Stay friendly, Southeast Iowa.